Hello, and a very warm welcome back to the podcast. I am, of course, I'm your host, Paul Lanfier. Nothing in the podcast, health advice, legal advice, all of that good stuff. Now, this is part, as you will have seen, of a subset or a mini series of the podcast called the All Stars. The All Stars are people that I've had the absolute privilege of working with as part of my inner circle group, and that's one of the sessions that we've got today. Graham, a very warm welcome to the podcast. Thank you for coming on.
Cool. All right. No, thanks for having me. Always a pleasure.
So, Graham, tell people who you are, tell them what your business is, give people a bit of an introduction.
So Graham Thomas, based in the northeast in a little town called Bishop Auckland, which is going through quite extensive regeneration.
Mhm.
So that's where all of our developments are based, and then we also have a holiday let management company or service accommodation company based in Newcastle in the northeast. We manage about 60 properties with quite considerable expansion next year, with another 90 coming on board. We've just taken another 14 on board this week. So yeah, things are looking up, which is good.
Very good. And then if you take us back to sort of the beginning of like when we met and we're I suppose started engaging each other, like where were you at before you joined in a circle, and what were some of the things that you were working on, like perhaps those problematic things, perhaps those challenges that you were dealing with?
So we were doing an area of regeneration, as I said, in Bishop Auckland. So the town has got a massive investment from a private individual who bought the castle here, probably about 10 years ago. And so
Mhm.
now it has the castle's now a palace, and it's been redone. It's got an arts gallery, it's got a museum, it's got an open air theatre which hosts about 8,000 people every week, every night of the weekend during the summer months, which is expanding. So they're spending another 100 million on that particular park alone, and it's all
Mhm.
within walking distance of the town. So on the back of that, the town centre has had lots of regeneration, and the council got, I think it was about 55 million pounds to spend on essentially regenerating the high street. So we purchased a building probably 3 years ago now, which we bought, which 10,000 square foot, so considerable size, and we bought that for 250,000. And then we then purchased four other buildings in the town, sorry, to then convert all commercial to residential, predominantly with a ground floor commercial unit retained. So we've got a bar restaurant going in one, quite a swanky one by Mike Bartley, and then we've got Caps Off, which is a local brewer, going into another one. So I always like to work with. It has to be. I'm a bit anal about this, where it has to be a local individual that uses the grant funding to open a business in one of our properties. So
No.
we've got two people going in there already, and then we've potentially got a local artist hub which is going to open up as well. So we were part way through one of our developments when I started this, and all the others were in planning at that point. And it's been a bit of a ball ache, as you know, because of the grant situation. Do you want me to delve into that now, or do you want to?
Well, I think let's give an overview of what those. Perhaps not let devil like go too much into the detail because it's an ongoing challenge that you're dealing with. But give us a flavour of some of the challenges that
Yeah.
that you've had to come across your desk, because you're doing some really chunky stuff there.
Yeah. So the,
You're changing the nature of that place. You know,
yeah.
yeah, very impressive.
Yeah, so the whole development, the whole area regeneration is worth about 12 million.
Mhm.
So it kind of centralized around this area of wasteland at the back, which we didn't own. It was owned by the Auckland project, who are doing all the investment into the area, and Kinrin. And I was aware that the council had earmarked some funding to put a car park in there, but essentially they were just going to tarmac it. So I sort of hijacked it, managed to get them to almost triple their budget to then create a sort of destination which is slightly further up the town to draw people along the high street, because it's very much focused on the centre of the high street. And I think Bishop Auckland actually has the longest high street in the country. It's an old Roman road that kind of goes straight up. So it's one big straight line. And it's about 2 miles long. So we had to draw people up the high street, but also regenerate the area. And all the properties that I've purchased are sort of surrounding this area. So all of our properties have rear balconies that face onto this, so it's landscape now. So we spent about 2.5 million plus purchase prices for the car park, knocked
Mhm.
down a big building to create a courtyard with a kids' play area. And then we then have, as I say, so the project that we are part way through with 10 apartments, 7 2 beds, 3 1 beds, and a ground floor bar restaurant. Then we've got a ground floor bar restaurant in another property that goes onto the courtyard with 5 apartments above, very swanky apartments. The architect's done an amazing job on that. So I am in love with that building. Actually, he's done such a nice job. Just got to turn it into a reality now. And then we bought a Masonic Hall, which is think it's about 12,000 square foot. It's a considerable size unit. If you go to the third floor, and we've got 10 apartments in the ground floor in there, and we purchased that for £85,000,
Mhm.
and it got valued at 300,000 with the planning. So we are also in legals with the building next door, which is an Masonic Hall. Everyone had died that owned it, had a fire a number of years ago,
Mhm.
and we're just at the end of that legal process to purchase it for legal costs only, which is very good. But it has taken 4 years of my life at least. So the problem that we've had is that all of those buildings had grant funding for out of this pot of 55 million.
Mhm.
So the building that we're on site with had we very gratefully got from the council £457,000 of grant funding, because at the point of when we purchased the building, everyone was saying, it's only going to be worth 800,000 at the end. So
Mhm.
the grant funding is there to buffer the gap between the development costs and the actual value of the property. Um, However, as you probably know, going to a bank and telling them that, they all just tell you to bugger off. So we had to then go out to private investors, and say, look, this is where we're at. Here's some like for likes in the region.
Mhm.
The product doesn't exist in the town. I think we can create it, and very luckily, thankfully, we managed to convince someone that we could do it, and we got an end valuation fairly recently on that of 1.76 million, so almost doubled in price. The issue is that partway through this, the council then withdrew, or they didn't manage it very well, the grant money that they had. So most of it got allocated to a hotel in
Mhm.
the town. They've now reissued 1.3 million of grants back into the town. So things are progressing. Just it's put us back probably 7 8 months realistically. So
Mhm.
yeah, taking a while. Sorry, slightly longer version, just to give people an idea of what we're actually doing.
No, I think that's really good because I think that gives us like, the color, and it explains like the magnitude of the project you're doing. And I think people will also have the insight in terms of, some of the complexities that you've had to resolve. And I will happily say straight out of the gate, absolutely hats on off to you for how well you have handled this, how measured. Yeah, I'm not sure I would have handled
So I
it.
don't think they'd be saying the same thing that.
Well, they're lucky not to have dealt with me because I don't think I would have handled it as graciously and as patiently as you have handled it. So I think that's good, and people get the sense of the scale of the project as well. Um, so obviously we've spent the year together in Inner Circle. So talk to a little bit about, how has Inner Circle helped? What insights did you get? How are things now? What kind of progress have we seen?
Yeah, so I think I sort of alluded to it the other day, is that I was looking for a mentor for easily 6 years, I would say. And I kept
Hmm.
having these sort of one-to-ones and going to property events, and they just didn't fit the bill. There wasn't there was far too much ego, I think, and a lot of people are doing it because it can generate, pretty decent money if you're doing this with lots of people. So I was quite like, I saw you talk at the not the Auckland project, at the property thing in Darlington,
Hmm.
and I know something just clicked into place with you, because there was no ego. You're very open and honest. It's not all about it's all gone swimmingly well, I'm going to make you a millionaire. It's almost a little bit of the opposite of that. It's things can go wrong, but here's how to do it in the right way, or this is, here's what to look out for. um and yeah, I like that, and I don't think, as I say, there's no ego behind you, I don't think. um you're very measured, very thoughtful, and so that's what I was kind of looking. But one thing I did like about the inner circle is that you're not. It isn't just your input. You've got the
Mhm.
input of 10 other people, which when you do these round table events are just absolutely sometimes to get 10 other people's perspective on something is just amazing from completely different backgrounds, yeah, completely different industries. Sometimes you've got the accountant there, very measured, you've got Dino, very measured, then you've got um people like Tony, who are probably more like me, a bit risk or like risk rather than risk adverse. So trying to get input from all those individuals is, yeah, being pretty amazing actually, and very, very helpful.
Yeah, and I have a sufficiently contained ego, Graham, to know that that is like the a big part of the magic of it. I mean, I've had one of the points of persuasion often need to deal with is people wanting like one-on-one consultancy. And
Yeah.
I'm at pain to say, look, I know that's what you think you would like, but actually what you would really benefit from is effectively having like nine other non-exec directors sitting around a table with no vested interests. They're not, they just want the very best for you, and they give you their honest perspective on things. Similarly, I don't consider myself a coach. I think coaches are really often very well trained, and they ask really intelligent questions. As you will know, if I know the answer, or I know the person who knows the answer, or I've been there before, I'll just blurt it out. I'll say, right, okay, so this is the person, this is the solution. So circling back to your comment, I do think a big part of the value is that non-exec feel of you've got all these people who've got your best interest at heart, who don't have an agenda, they're not looking to sell you on something, and they're offered,
Mm.
and it's nice to hear those different voices. So if you're a little bit more on the pro risk side of things, which you clearly are, Graham, it's not a bad thing, is it, to hear the voices of the more cautious, the more, and those kind of things. Equally, for people who are more analytical, not that you're not analytical, but let's
Yeah.
say on the extreme end of analytical, it's really encouraging, I think, for them to speak to people with vision, and who have a different view to them, because somewhere in the middle is like the path, isn't there? There's the balance.
Yeah.
So what does the future look like for Graham?
So the future, I guess, is finishing these developments, and as we've spoken about quite a few times, I'm going to take a little bit of time off after that,
Mhm.
and well, try and take some time off of that, because I still look at lots of properties, and we are looking at or we are partway through purchasing a site to do supported housing, which
Mhm.
is hopefully with Dina as well. So it was a site that she was involved with, or the chap was she was involved with the gentleman who went into insolvency. So we are looking at that, and then I'm also looking at this youth hostel in the Lake District, but really I shouldn't have much to do with that. Completely honest, we've got two managers that will take over it, and away they go. So that is the future for me. That I do have a full-time job as a commercial manager for Properties Unique, so that does take up 4 days of my week, but it does mean that I'm out, most days socializing in the property space, and I
Mhm.
think that's really important, rather than me just sat in my living room kind of just tapping away at a computer. You get so sort of isolated sometimes. I like the fact that I am out talking to developers on a sort of daily basis. It
Yeah.
keeps my ear to the ground, find out what's going on, again, get input from different people. And it's the same with your golden nuggets. It's kind of like, actually, you make me look at things from a different perspective again. Like stocks and shares, for example, but the impact that that might have on property, for example, or I've never been so politically interested, I don't think, in my entire life, because it has such a knock-on effect to what you're doing. Just
Mhm.
getting a mortgage, for example,
Mhm.
as Labour have recently showed us that, you know, the impact that it can have on you as a business. So that is a massive take that I've got from this year. I was never really interested in it or paid much attention to it until this year. So
Mm.
I
That's
don't
very
know if
good.
you're aware of that, but there you go.
No, I was absolutely not aware of that. That's a revelation to me, but I'm pleased to hear it. Um, And so if you were speaking to somebody who's thinking about, maybe they've come across the podcast, maybe they've come to a breakfast, or maybe they haven't actually, and they're thinking, what's this inner circle thing? I suppose it's that thing like, what would you say to somebody who is thinking about learning a bit more about inner circle and perhaps exploring it?
I think definitely go to one of your events because that's what I did. I saw you talk at the property thing and then went to your event in Leeds with Anthony Boyce. And again, it's such a different environment from the property thing. Property thing is a little bit like two mates having a giggle, isn't it? With some property thrown in. And yours was like, again, really engaging because you were engaging. I had, we almost had a mini inner circle because I
Mhm.
was with that table of people, we were discussing property. And rather than you just sat next to someone, you might have a quick, bit of chat with them in between breaks. It was actually, I knew those people at the end of that session. I didn't have a chance to speak to everyone else, but if I kept going, because it's in Leeds, it's quite a distance, but if I kept going, you'd get that almost every week, I'd assume. So I think you create a really close network of people who actually
Mhm.
like sharing, are equally minded. And I think all of the egos, if you do go there, would just not come back. So everyone there has a similar sort of mindset and perspective, I think, and view of the world. Um, and I think actually you'd probably just tell them to bugger off if they did sort of all guns blazing. So yeah, definitely do that. I think a one-to-one call with you is always useful. I've done so many one-to-one calls with mentors in the past or potential mentors, and you see them talk, and then you do a one-to-one with them, and you're like, that doesn't quite add up. And then you have a look on Company's House, and you do a bit of research, and it's actually like, oh, actually, what you're saying, what you're doing are two different, very, very different things. Whereas with
Mhm.
you, it all checked out, which as a previous barrister is always doing too, isn't it? So yeah, so do your homework as always. Go and see you, speak to everyone else at
Mhm.
the events. And I think as soon as you go to the event, I think you'll get a feel and a flavour of what the inner circle will be like.
Yeah, awesome. That sounds good to me. And you came to the obviously the adventure retreat. I mean, give us a sentence on what you made of the adventure retreat? Because for people, obviously people will not know this, but you are a mountain leader. That's an environment that you're familiar with. You have a great passion for the outdoors. I mean, we've spent a lot of time talking about this, and you know that my base case is that we need less screen time, we need more time in nature. I think this is how we can learn better, all kinds of different things. But give us like a few words on the adventure retreat. What did you make of that?
Really, really good event, or weekend away because it's straight into the outdoors, climbing a mountain, phones away, phones off. And what's great about the accommodation is there's no bloody signal.
Yeah,
So straight away, it was really surprising actually how much I look at my phone and
yeah.
how often I'm on there. Even like you get a minute and you start scrolling on social media for no bloody reason. So I actually log out now. Since the adventure retreat, I log out of my social media. I log in on the evening and then I do whatever I need to do if I'm doing it or just to check in on things. Normally, it's a couple of property pages that I look at and Bishop Auckland surrounding areas page. So that's a big takeaway for me, actually, is to sort of decompress from that because
Mhm.
you're constantly being barraged by social media and noise. And
Mhm.
I need that time to think. So the retreat really locked that in for me because you
Mhm.
come away and I really like the little sessions that he did, especially about leave the past behind. Really like that one because you do dwell on it sometimes and it's not going to help. Learn from it and move on. So I did like that one. Um, I even got used to hugging people, which is a new one for me. So yeah, no, really enjoyed it. Someone that does the outdoors a lot.
Yeah.
I've done all these things before. I've climbed Coniston before, but because again, you're just chatting with like-minded people, you can just talk about property all day. So it's like joining the two best things in the world together. So yeah, lovely event, and 4 days of yoga is equally as good. So
Yeah, yeah. Oh, well, I'm absolutely thrilled to hear that. So, Graham, we have agreed that we're going to put your email address into the show notes. So, obviously, please treat whilst Graham is pleased for you to reach out to him. Obviously, treat his email address with respect that it deserves. Don't add him to a mailing list without his consent and all that good stuff. Look, Graham. It's been an absolute pleasure being on Inner Circle. As you know, you've added an enormous amount of value, bringing it to everybody, including myself in the group. Just wishing you continued success, which naturally we're all going to follow. And thank you very much for coming on to the podcast as well.
Yeah, likewise, Paul. It has been genuinely an absolute pleasure, and I don't think I could have actually got through this year without your advice and guidance and everyone else's in the inner circle. So thank you again. Yeah, I'm forever in your debt. So thank you.
That's wonderful to hear. We'll leave it there. Thanks very much for listening to the podcast. Please do seek Graham out if you think he can be of any help. If you're interested in learning more, the best thing to do would be to come to the next property and investor breakfast. And as Graham says, from time to time, we do these one-to-one consultations as well, and we can have a chat about that. Thanks for listening to the podcast. Speak soon and see you very soon. Take care.